When it comes to managing the thyroid, there's a lot of mistakes that get made out there, especially around the fundamentals, testing and medicating it. So I want to talk about both those things today. First of all, when it comes to testing, the biggest mistake I see is that a lot of the times either not enough tests are done or the wrong tests are done. And if you only test a couple of things, then you're really not making an accurate call on what's actually going on with the thyroid. Now, to preempt that, you also need to take into consideration that very, very rarely, if ever, is the thyroid the primary source of the problem. Anytime you have too much or too little thyroid activity, what we call hyper or hypothyroidism, and any autoimmune disease that goes along with that, like Hashimoto's or Graves', it's so rare that that's coming straight from the thyroid. It's almost always reacting because there's a gut issue or something else going on that's created a whole host of inflammation and autoimmune problems. And so you really have to go and find out first in testing, before you even worry about the thyroid, what's driving all of this? What's driving the inflammation? What's driving the gut issue? So start by testing things like an organic acids test, mold test, or even chemicals and heavy metals, Lyme and its co-infections like Borrelia or Bartonella, parasites, all these kind of things. You first have to work out what's driving it all, because no matter what the thyroid shows you, if you don't correct that problem, you're never going to fully correct the thyroid. So then let's go to thyroid testing. So often I'll see people come back from their regular MD and they'll have tested T3, T4, and TSH, and that's it. It's not enough to make a decision, especially if you're going to decide to go on medications that can be really hard on the body. They're only band-aiding over the cracks, and they should not be a long-term solution. And I know there's some of you watching this who have probably needed to go on thyroid medication for the short term because the more holistic or natural things just didn't work. That's okay, as long as there's a game plan to get you off it. So what should you be testing? Well, first of all, obviously we're going to test T3 and T4. They're the main hormones produced by the thyroid gland. But you should also be testing the free T3 and the free T4. What that is unbound versions of those hormones, meaning they're still able to be used by the different cells in the body. They haven't yet been bound to anything. So when you just do T3, T4, it's measuring the bound and unbound thyroid as one, or thyroid hormone as one. Free is just the unbound. Then you'll almost always also have tested the TSH, which is a hormone released by the pituitary gland that goes into the blood. And so if we detect within our bloodstream not enough thyroid hormones, especially T4, the pituitary gland will produce more TSH, which will then tell the thyroid to make more. And then if there's too much in the blood, it will stop producing TSH, which will then cut down on thyroid production. Those alone do give you some valuable information, but we also need to look at some other things if we're truly concerned about autoimmune problems. And we have to keep in mind too, that just because something is in the normal reference range doesn't mean everything's working properly. I always look for early changes within that normal reference range, and where I'll often see it is T3 will start to decrease and free T4 will start to decrease, but they'll both, everything will be in normal range, but they'll both be getting on the lower end of the spectrum, and that's the time you want to act. That's when you want to start cleaning up your diet and making sure you're eating some grass-fed red meat, especially organ meat. And if you're not going to eat organs, take a beef thyroid capsule. Ancestral Supplements makes a really good one that will help drive the thyroid. There's a company called Biotics Research that makes a product called GTA Forte. That's a really good one to help drive back up thyroid production as well. So I would be starting there so you don't even need to get into the medications. Then there's a couple other things that we want to test. And we mentioned the TSH, which is often an early warning sign too. So if that's starting to creep up, then that means you're not making enough thyroid hormone. If it's starting to creep to the lower end, then that might mean we have too much or excess thyroid hormone. But again, it might still be in normal range, but if it fits with what you're also starting to see on a shift of T3, T4, that's a big deal. Then we want to measure what you'll often see as anti-TPO. So TPO is an important enzyme that the body uses, and anti just means antibodies. So basically this blood test is detecting antibodies to that enzyme. Now, if it's positive, if you've got too many of those antibodies, then that usually indicates that you're either in autoimmune disease already or it's coming in the near future if you don't change anything. Same with the anti-TG. This is another one where those antibodies should be 0 or very low. So if both those things are creeping up, then you know your body's starting to fall into an autoimmune problem. The last one I like to check is something called reverse T3. Now, there's no real use in the body that you need to worry about for what we use with this reverse T3, but if it's getting into excess, it can block the receptors where normal T3 would go and dock and do its thing. So that can also give you a lot of signs of what's going on. And when you take all these pieces to the puzzle and you add it to whatever symptoms you're having, and you add it to the health of the gut and whatever underlying causes are going on, now you get a really good picture of what's happening in the body. And even if you do have to use a Levoxy or some kind of thyroid medication, now you can at least come up with a game plan to go, well, how am I only going to use this for the short term and then be able to get off it? Because when you're on it long term, it can be a real mess. So if you've got questions about thyroid testing, what to do for a thyroid that's getting out of range, autoimmunity in general, just leave a comment below. I know it's really difficult to be doing this stuff, especially if your doctor isn't really keyed in on what's driving it all. Obviously, you can't get medical advice that's super accurate online, but we can at least help you move in the right direction. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because I don't want you to miss the next videos I'm doing on other types of lab tests that you need to do that are often being done wrong or incomplete, and a whole bunch of information on autoimmunity as well. But to this point, thank you so much for your attention.